Velma is the latest episode in the ongoing Go Woke, Go Broke saga. What's very interesting about this in particular, though, is Mindy Kaling managed to piss off everybody. She managed to piss off both sides. She bit the hand that fed her. She did the typical She-Hulk, make a show that attacks the fans on behalf of people who aren't fans, who can derive entertainment value simply from subverting a popular IP and attacking it. That it doesn't even have to be good. As long as you do that, those people will be entertained. She pissed off those people too by making little, what she thought were sly anti-woke jokes. Those people are not known for their self-deprecating sense of humor. So I put together a little montage to give you an idea of what's going on around this adult version of Scooby-Doo.
This new version of Judy Jetson wouldn't be boy crazy? The only word I had to describe my disgust is jinkies. If there is one thing the internet agrees on, it's that you should never change anything ever. Sincerely, Velma. Well, at least Judy's still white.
Why do you want to piss off existing fans? I'm sure the answer at the pitch session was, we're looking to make it for a modern audience, which is the dumbest thing any creative person could say.
Rich white dude, I'd kill everybody just to get away with it.
Oh, yeah.
Fred Jones was arrested for murder.
You didn't mention Fred had a tiny dong.
Oh, yeah. Real baby carrot.
He looks like Hitler! And not just because we compare everyone to Hitler these days.
Stop! Not in front of my gang!
Each of the victims is
hot. Why don't you teach them to be not hot like you, Velma?
Sex sells, and in today's overcrowded market, you need a hook.
The only hook a good show ever needs is good storytelling.
Great. Now even just being myself won't work.
Okay, so that gives you some idea of what's swirling around this show.
And let's just, before we go on, let's just shout out Call Me Chato. He was the critic in that. He's got a good channel, and Supercut Delight for one of those little segments there.
Yeah, and call
links
me
are in the links are in the description, so go and subscribe to them.
Yeah, Call Me Chato. He's a former television network executive, so he brings an interesting perspective to a lot of his critiques. And as you could probably pick up from that little clip, he's a little stunned by how modern Hollywood seems to be making business decisions based on the premise that attacking fans is a good thing. In the extended version of that video, he says, now, when I was a network executive, if you had pitched this show to me, I would have said, well, why are you attacking the fans? And who is this being made for? Now, having subjected myself to watch it in order to do this segment, I can tell you it's certainly not worse than a lot of other Go Woke, Go Broke projects. This is King Lear compared to She-Hulk. So why did it get such vicious backlash? Because it went after her own people. All of the race swapping, all of the virtue signaling, all of that, all of the, I gotta say, the way they went after Fred was so over the top, just attack on this white guy. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing. I mean, you can see it from that little cut that I put together. It's just so relentless. This just going after this guy for being heterosexual and white. It's just incredible. And all of that would have been to the good, except she made a couple of jokes that upset them. We have one slide of one of those from the Me Too moment. Okay, so here's one of the tweets. Using Velma for a line like this is uncomfortable at best. I refuse to believe there is any reality where Velma does not wholeheartedly support Me Too. It just feels wrong. So she has a line. Exactly. I spit truth without a filter like every comedian before hashtag Me Too. Okay. You got to pick a lane. If you're going to make one of these shows whose whole purpose is to subvert an IP that people love, essentially you're going to spit in the eye of the fan base for this property. That's your business model. But you want to exchange those people, presumably, for people who literally can derive entertainment pleasure simply from you doing that, from portraying Fred as a white mediocrity with a small penis, right? That's your audience. People who can watch that. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be clever. They're so bitter. They have so much hate in their heart. They have so much self-loathing that's enough. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be entertaining. That's entertaining for a certain number of people. Not enough people to make a show profitable, hence the lack of a She-Hulk season 2. Hence Wakanda Forever, which repeatedly refers to white people as colonizers, affectionately, we assume, made about half what Black Panther made. So this is not as much of an audience as the fans that you're alienating. But Mindy, for whatever reason, decided it would be a good idea to alienate those people as well with lines like that. That's why it got trashed like that on Rotten Tomatoes. That's why you see no defenders.
Well, I mean, there's also, yes, everything you just said about, if you're going to create a sort of tribute / spin-off show, you shouldn't be this overtly hostile to the fans of the show. Yes, that's one thing. The other thing is, there is a very, very, sorry, I want to put this up one more time, just so we see the joke here, right? We used to tell the truth, right, until Me Too came along, right? There's a very small cross-section of social justice warriors and people who have a sense of humor about being social justice warriors, right? Like,
there's
the
like
people
3
who
of them
subscribe to the woke thing don't tend to have a self-deprecating sense of humor in that way, right? They don't like jokes being made about how pretentious they are. Mindy Kaling is probably one of them. Maybe Sarah Silverman is another, right? Basically, woke comics are the only people who are going to respond to that because they're the only people who just have it in their wiring to look for ironies, right? But
right.
There's nothing there's nothing ironic about wokeism, right? It is the absolute opposite of irony. It traffics in absolute truths and absolute moral truths, right? And so, yeah, there's really not going to be much of an audience for that. I saw some people talking in the chat about how even the shit libs, because they hate the show, they're trying to smear Mindy Kaling as a conservative. I just want to show a tweet up here from Mindy. This is dated on June 7th, 2016, which some might remember as the day of the California primary, where Hillary Clinton officially clinched the number of delegates necessary to become the Democratic nominee. She tweeted out, and this is really this is one of those things where I'm sorry, like once I see this, I can't unsee it. It's impossible for me to feel bad for you after seeing a tweet like this. It's also impossible for me to really take you as an authority on comedy. A person who is this idiotic, and this conformist, and this shallow, and this stupid cannot really be funny, right? Comedy is a rare medium that really requires intelligence. Like, you can't be a dumb person and a good comedian. You could be a dumb person and a great musician. You could be a dumb person and a great painter or a great actor. You can't be that stupid, that incurious, that shallow, and that conformist and be a good comedian, because comedy is about irony. Irony is about subversion, right? And so, I'm sorry. I can't cry any tears for her.
Well, I think this is part of it. So we have the Rowling tweet, right?
Yeah, I'm going to put that
up. So
right
claiming that she's a conservative is bullshit. There was a rumor that she was a Republican like 10 years ago, which was the Yes Queen tweet should shut that down.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, if not that, what?
But she liked a J.K. Rowling tweet. I remember there was a lot of controversy around this. And this was a very famous tweet from J.K. Rowling. Somebody tweeted at her, "How do you sleep at night knowing you've lost a whole audience from buying your books? I read my most recent royalty checks and find the pain goes away pretty quickly." And Mindy Kaling liked that. Now, then she unliked it because she got afraid of blowback to her career. Mindy Kaling is from an Indian, I believe, immigrant family. And you know what? Indian culture is more conservative than our own. And very often, if you talk to the children of immigrant parents from more conservative cultures, a lot of times they're a little more conservative, even if they're basically liberal. Very often they harbor some conservative cultural views because that's the family background they came from. I don't think she accidentally liked that tweet. I think she felt very yes queen about that, right? Well, right. She was probably instinctively didn't like the idea that they're trying to tell her what she can and can't say. I would imagine she probably sympathizes with her views on trans people going into women's spaces. And so she went with her first instinct there. And that is very consistent with what you see in this show, because it's not good, but here and there, it seems like she feels like I'm giving them a Chinese drug dealing lesbian Daphne. I'm giving them a South Asian, I don't know, vaguely bisexual Velma who's having a thing with Daphne. I'm giving them a black Shaggy who's not even named Shaggy anymore. I can get away with going outside the box a little bit and poking a little bit around the edges of woke humor and woke standards, but you can't. You can't. Not at all. Not at all. And now that you burned the fans, you can't burn those people too. That is what She-Hulk didn't do. There was not a line, not a moment, not a gesture, not a nod or a thought in She-Hulk that was not designed to appeal to bitter, upscale feminists. And if you said a bad word about that show, they came for you, man. Wow, were they all about it? It was like, wow, this was like somebody followed me with a camera if I could turn into a 6'7" green person, right? That's what that was for them. This, now you attacked them, and they don't dig that. They're not going to forgive you for that. So now you have nobody. Now the show is not for anybody. What was also funny was before the backlash, particularly you get all this backlash from Indian women, which I think is valid, saying, hey, you know what? Having Mindy Kaling constantly inserting her own experience as feeling like an ugly loser isn't really esteem building for us. To keep having the Indian woman be this person who's like homely and in awe of white people and their accomplishments and their aesthetic superiority. Before that backlash came, this is what's funny when the woke eat each other. So you had, I did find Screen Rant and of course the Daily Beast gave it a glowing review about how it's subverting white expectations, and because that's the script. That's before people really saw it and they realized there was going to be a backlash. They thought they'd get out ahead and woo, yeah, race swapped, Scooby-Doo, woo. And you're not going to see a single review like that going forward. The most common reaction this is getting is it's just mean. It's taken a show that was about this group of friends that supported each other, and it's just mean-spirited. And it's not even about the fact that you race swapped people. I don't think people would really care about that if it had any relationship to the source material. And this is what keeps being done again and again. You have these people who clearly hate this popular IP, but clearly deep down they know that their woke agenda is not popular. So what they're trying to do is insert it into IPs that are popular in order to spread that message. If you really had confidence in your aesthetics, where are all these great new movies and TV shows being done from this point of view? Why do you feel like you have to take things that already have a fan base and subvert them in order to communicate?
Well, when you communicate it in this way, it's obviously going to be a failure because there is very little audience for wokeness in general. There's an even smaller, almost infinitely smaller audience for self-aware woke comedy, right? You know what I mean? But there is a way to do it successfully if you do it well and if you do it subtly. A movie that did it very successfully and not even so subtly was the Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. Russell and I actually recorded an episode on that. Russell actually wrote an article about that when it came out. That was back in 2019. We had no YouTube show back then. But maybe we should revisit that for the film club because that's an example of taking a well-known IP and basically injecting a certain message into it. But that tapped into a very sort of class-conscious zeitgeist attitude that a lot of people were feeling at that time. And so it worked. And people really embraced the sort of social, political sort of themes of the movie. By basically turning the Batman mythology on its head, making Bruce Wayne this privileged little fascist villain, and the Joker was the sort of renegade rebel leading a very imperfect, obviously, and confused, but we felt justified rebellion against the sort of aristocracy of that world. And so it worked, right? And actually, Todd Phillips told Joaquin Phoenix when he was pitching in the movie, he says, we're basically making Taxi Driver, but we're just calling it Joker so that people come see it, right?
Right.
And Joaquin Phoenix said, it's funny because, I think Todd Phillips actually told the story on the Michael Moore show. He said, Joaquin Phoenix asked me, he says, well, I'll do it. But he says, can we call it Arthur instead of Joker? Because the character's name is Arthur. Todd says, no. The whole point is we have to call it Joker. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make it. So they call it Joker, and then we make the kind of movie we want. We sneak this message into it as a sort of Trojan horse kind of thing. And it worked. It worked because the message was right and the delivery was right, you know. So it's not impossible. But look, there is just no willingness to adapt on a lot of these people's parts. And we were talking offline about this earlier, where you mentioned how, you know, it's this age-old saying, Hollywood is a business first. It's a business first. It's about the bottom line. And yet we see a lot of studios willing to sacrifice the bottom line in order to try and cram these sort of woke messages down the audience's throats. And I think post-Trump, Hollywood really feels like it has a responsibility to drag the population in this woke direction, kicking and screaming if necessary, even if they don't like it. I think they feel a sense of responsibility, as twisted as it is. I think they feel that, you know, and we've gotten into this in the past because that's the only way they can express it. Because if you go in a class-conscious direction, well, that threatens them. That's what made the Joker movie so subversive, right? And so controversial. And that's why before everybody saw it and loved it, if you remember, they were smearing that movie in the press before the reviews came in, before the audience got to speak, right? Before people went and saw that,
it's going to cause incel violence
at the theater, right? Exactly, right. They tried to undermine that movie as much as they could, but they couldn't stop the audiences from going to see it and loving it because it was great.
Yeah, and I think really doing this, it's hastening their own demise. Hollywood lost 40% of its market value last year. And that is accelerating a process that's already been underway as everything moves towards streaming. Look, we had a big conversation about Andrew Callaghan and his movie, This Place Rules. Now, whatever you think about the movie, that movie is very much a product of an online aesthetic. That is coming. That is here. You have an entire generation that's been raised on that. Have you ever sat down to try to watch a classic of the 70s with a 20-year-old? Have you ever tried to watch something like The Godfather or The Conversation with a 20-year-old? You lose them in the first 5 minutes because there's not a cut. There's not an edit. those slow scenes that are just left to play out, the way the audience is left to marinate in the mood, they don't get it. They don't get it because this is their aesthetic. YouTube, on the phone, the smartphone, online. So the whole Hollywood business model is on fire, and they're only hastening the end of their business as it's been known. I think that for independent creators opens up a great opportunity. Look what happened with these guys. I forget the name of their company. They create they're 3 black men. They created their own anti-woke comic book. Not that that's what it was about, but they just rejected all of those themes. In other words, they just made a traditional comic book. These guys raised over $1 million in 3 days on GoFundMe for that. So this is just opening up an opportunity to make stuff that people like. Hollywood's going to keep making stuff that nobody likes. Nature abhors a vacuum. People are going to make stuff that people like, and they're going to distribute it probably online. They'll distribute it through other channels. And more, Hollywood is going to become irrelevant, as it is becoming irrelevant.
Please clap.